am a giant fan of Star Wars since one of my earliest memories is watching A New Hope on VHS. I think I was 5 years old, sitting down with like a bag of Oreos. So my dad introduced me to Star Wars at a young age, and I've been a fan ever since. Collected the toys before there was toys. After the dark period of no toys in the early 90s, 1995 came out. We had toys coming out then. Bought toys. Special edition came out. Did the prequels, and then it just has been a fandom that I've been in for years. Honestly, the majority of my life. When Star Wars popped up, you had a science fiction world that was a little more accessible to the general public. I mean, this was a movie that blew up because people were interested. With all the merchandising, people got more interested in what Star Wars was. And when you look back at pictures from 1977, and there's fans that started building their own costumes back then. And you had small fan groups that started forming. You had Panther Tracks that got, was created, and that was kind of like the official Star Wars fan club for a while. But over the years, it's definitely grown on its own. I think what sets Star Wars apart from a lot of other IPs in terms of fandom involvement is that the fans are highly organized themselves. There's a lot of small fan groups, locally. There are the costuming fan groups that are organized globally. You have fans that have message boards that just talk about Star Wars. There's Facebook groups. It's not something you'll go to a convention like this and you'll find a Star Wars fan and you'll talk. But it's definitely one of those things where you can easily find other Star Wars fans to talk to, no matter where you are, even online. And because the fans are more organized, you see them coming together a lot more. And I think that's one thing that you see. That's why you see fans out there a lot more than you might for some other properties. I think the way that people express their fandom has evolved. I don't think the fandom itself has. It has in a way where, back in the 70s and 80s you had 3 movies. Now you have a lot more than 3 movies. You have TV shows, you have cartoon series, you have online, you have magazines, expanded universe. I think fandom has just grown a lot more, especially with the last few movies. And you see people who kind of just the fandom almost generation in a way where people have their own version of what Star Wars means to them and what brought them in. Like, personally for me, I started watching the original trilogy. That was my first introduction to Star Wars. You have other people that their first introduction was the prequel, so for them, that's their Star Wars that they grew up with, and that's what was introduced to them. Same thing with special editions, the sequels, the one-offs like Rogue One, Clone Wars, all those different shows. There are different ways to get into the fandom. So because you have these different generations, each generation almost has a way of expressing what Star Wars means to them. So it's definitely grown. I think with it growing, you have a lot more people expressing their own take on what Star Wars is.
Do you think
The costuming community has definitely grown over the past few years. With, I think, every single Star Wars movie or new property that comes out, there are more people who are interested, and events like comic conventions, charity events where people see stormtroopers or rebel pilots, people get interested. And with that, you just have more and more people wanting to join. And again, like I was mentioning earlier, the fans are well organized. They create these message boards, they create groups like the 501st and Early Command Mercs. I don't know if it's evolved, it's just definitely grown, especially with more costumes and more people coming into it. I think that it's very unique to Star Wars versus other properties to have these types of costume groups that they take pride in what they do and representing their, they feel like they're a part of Star Wars because they're fans of Star Wars and they get to wear it around. You're definitely seeing it, that the fan groups expand a lot more just the past few years. Just with new characters coming in, new types of armor. Mando Mercs has definitely grown with the Mandalorian coming out. You're seeing more Jedi coming out with like Ahsoka. I don't think there's been any major evolution, but it's definitely been an exponential growth. I think what it is, it's that the X-Wing pilot costume represents old school Star Wars, at least the original trilogy, and to see the blue, it's kind of, it's new Star Wars, but it still has that old Star Wars feel. So it's a pilot, it's recognizable as a pilot, but that color change feels special to, you know, that the Rogue One, like, oh, it's like the original trilogy, but it's new, and you still kind of get the same feeling. It's new, but it's old. If that makes any sense.
Right.
Where,
Yeah.
you know, the orange is beautiful. Like, I love the orange; it's classic. But there's something about that blue. I just really like the way it looks. Because you get to be a part of Star Wars when you do. When you put the armor on, you're no longer you. You're now a stormtrooper. You're now a TIE pilot. You're Darth Vader. You have that ability to be Star Wars, so you get to have that involvement in the fandom and also represent Star Wars for the general public when they see it at an event. You definitely see the people who come to events, like whenever we've done events, we do open invitations for premieres, screenings, or retail events. When the fans come in costume, you definitely see them take ownership of the character because they have so much pride in the work that they put to build their costume. They show that same pride in representing that character at the event. And again, like they're all Star Wars fans. The reason that people build these costumes is because it's a way for them to express their appreciation and their love of Star Wars. Some people collect toys, some people build costumes, some people collect the art, some people do everything. But for the costume builders, it's definitely a way for them to represent their love of Star Wars. And because they care for it so much and they care for all the work they put into the costume, they take that extra effort to make sure that not only do they represent themselves well, but they represent Star Wars. I had always wanted to work for Lucasfilm. It was definitely the job opened at the right moment when I was in between jobs, looking for something new. I had experience working at Universal Studios Hollywood, doing production work there for the theme park and doing events there. And I've been a member of the 501st Legion for a few years at that point. The job window opened up that they were looking for somebody to assist with events and also character appearances. And I fit the bill. I was like what they were looking for, and I applied. And it was great because part of my interview, they were asking, you know, what does Star Wars mean to you? And I went on this large, you know, like 5-minute discussion of all, you know, what Star Wars means to me is a big part of my life. And they're like, oh yeah, you'll fit in there. So that made me feel really good.